It is ruinous to be so occupied with the study of oneself as to be weary of everything else. Mitchell de Montaigne, they tell you to love yourself. They tell you that self-esteem is the answer. They preach that confidence will unlock your potential. But they omit the critical truth. The ego is a fragile structure, a gilded cage built from external validation. It's a phantom limb, aching for recognition that will never truly satisfy. This pursuit of self-love, as they define it, is a fool's errand. It's a constant chase for a feeling that's contingent on fleeting circumstances and the fickle opinions of others. You become a prisoner of your own inflated self-image, forever vulnerable to the slightest criticism, the merest hint of disapproval. The world does not reward fragile egos. It rewards competence, resilience, and a clear-eyed understanding of reality. It doesn't care about your self-esteem. It cares about your results. And the relentless pursuit of ego gratification distracts you from the very things that would make you truly valuable: skill, discipline, and the ability to withstand adversity. Imagine a general consumed with his own image, more concerned with his uniform's gleam than the battle's strategy. He will lead his troops to slaughter. Consider the artist, obsessively seeking praise for every brushstroke. He will become paralyzed by the fear of judgment, his creativity stifled by the need for approval. Or the businessman driven by a need to prove his worth. He will make reckless decisions, risking everything for the fleeting high of success, ultimately crashing and burning. The ego, left unchecked, becomes a tyrant, dictating your actions and warping your perception. Those who preach the gospel of self-love often benefit from your dependence on it. They sell you courses, books, and affirmations, promising to unlock the secret to your inner happiness. But the secret is that there is no secret. True power comes not from inflated self-regard, but from a realistic assessment of your strengths and weaknesses, and a relentless dedication to self-improvement. It's about becoming the person you respect, not the person you desperately want others to admire. The path to genuine strength lies in dismantling the ego's prison, brick by painstaking brick. It requires confronting your insecurities, accepting your imperfections, and focusing on mastering your craft. It's about building a foundation of competence so solid that external validation becomes irrelevant. Imagine a sculptor, not seeking applause for his every chisel strike, but focused solely on revealing the masterpiece hidden within the stone. He finds satisfaction not in the praise of onlookers, but in the act of creation itself. This is the path to true power. This is the path to freedom. The ego thrives on external validation, constantly seeking affirmation to maintain its fragile sense of self. But true strength arises from internal fortitude, cultivated through persistent effort and unwavering self-assessment. Imagine a seasoned general, not consumed by the applause of his troops, but focused on the intricate details of strategy, anticipating every move of the enemy. His confidence stems not from inflated self-importance, but from the depth of his knowledge and the rigor of his preparation. He understands that victory is earned not through bravado, but through meticulous planning and disciplined execution. This is the essence of competence, the antidote to the ego's insatiable hunger for praise. Consider the chess master, meticulously analyzing the board, not seeking the admiration of spectators, but calculating every possible outcome. His focus is absolute, his mind a fortress against distraction. He sees the game not as a reflection of his worth, but as a complex puzzle to be solved. Each move is deliberate, each sacrifice carefully considered. He understands that mastery requires unwavering concentration and a willingness to learn from every defeat. This is the path to true understanding, a path that transcends the ego's shallow need for recognition. The ego fears failure, viewing it as a personal indictment, a threat to its inflated sense of self. But failure is an inevitable part of growth, an opportunity to learn and adapt. Embrace your failures, dissect them, and extract the lessons they offer. View each setback not as a defeat, but as a stepping stone on the path to mastery. The ego demands perfection, an unattainable ideal that leads only to frustration and paralysis. Accept your imperfections, Acknowledge your weaknesses and focus on continuous improvement. The sculptor does not discard a flawed piece of stone, but skillfully shapes it, revealing its hidden potential. Those who are truly powerful are not afraid to admit their mistakes. They understand that vulnerability is not weakness, but a sign of strength. They seek feedback, not to inflate their ego, but to refine their skills. They are constantly learning, adapting, and evolving. The ego clings to its illusions of grandeur, resisting change and clinging to outdated beliefs. But the truly strong are flexible, adaptable, and willing to challenge their own assumptions. They understand that the world is constantly changing, and that they must evolve to survive. The ego is a master of disguise, constantly shifting its form to protect itself from perceived threats. It can manifest as arrogance, defensiveness, or even self-deprecation. Learn to recognize its subtle manipulations, its attempts to control your thoughts and actions. Observe your own behavior, identify your triggers, and challenge your assumptions. Ask yourself, is this thought driven by ego or by reason? Am I acting out of fear or out of strength? The process of self-discovery is not always easy, but it is essential for breaking free from the ego's prison. The ego seeks to define you by external achievements, by titles, possessions, and accolades. But true identity lies within, in the values you hold, the principles you uphold, and the impact you have on the world. Focus on building a life of meaning and purpose, a life that is aligned with your deepest values. Seek fulfillment not in the pursuit of external validation, but in the pursuit of inner growth. The businessman who finds satisfaction not in the accumulation of wealth, but in the creation of jobs and the improvement of lives. The artist who finds fulfillment not in the praise of critics, but in the act of creating beauty. This is the path to true freedom, a path that transcends the ego's narrow confines. Detach yourself from the outcome. Focus on the process. The ego demands instant gratification, seeking immediate results and recognition. But true mastery requires patience, perseverance, and a willingness to embrace the journey. Learn to find satisfaction in the process of learning, growing, and improving. The sculptor does not expect to create a masterpiece overnight, but meticulously chips away at the stone, day after day, year after year. He finds fulfillment not in the final product, but in the act of creation itself. Embrace discomfort. The ego seeks comfort and avoids anything that challenges its sense of self. But growth happens outside of your comfort zone, in the face of adversity and uncertainty. Step outside of your comfort zone, take risks, and challenge yourself. Learn to embrace discomfort, viewing it not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth. The seasoned warrior does not shy away from battle, but confronts it head-on, knowing that it is through struggle that he becomes stronger. Cultivate stillness. In the chaos of modern life, it is easy to become lost in the constant noise and distractions. Take time each day to cultivate stillness, to quiet your mind and connect with your inner self. Practice meditation, spend time in nature, or simply sit in silence and observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment. Stillness allows you to see through the ego's illusions, to connect with your true self, and to find inner peace. The ego is a powerful force, but it is not invincible. With awareness, discipline, and unwavering commitment, you can dismantle its prison, brick by painstaking brick, and unleash your true potential. The world awaits the masterpiece within you. Consider the tale of Marcus Corvus, a rising star in the cutthroat world of corporate finance. From a young age, Marcus was driven by an insatiable hunger for success, fueled by a deep-seated need for validation. He saw the world as a chessboard, and every interaction as a strategic move to advance his position. His ego, a finely crafted facade of confidence and competence, was his most prized possession, the shield that protected him from vulnerability, and the weapon that he wielded to dominate his rivals. He climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency, sacrificing personal relationships and ethical considerations along the way. His colleagues admired his ambition, but also feared his coldness and his willingness to betray anyone who stood in his path. Marcus believed that his success was solely due to his own brilliance and hard work, conveniently overlooking the privileges and advantages that had paved his way. He reveled in the accolades and the power that came with his position, mistaking them for genuine worth. The more successful he became, the more entrenched his ego grew, blinding him to his own flaws and limitations. He surrounded himself with sycophants who reinforced his inflated sense of self, further isolating him from reality. He began to believe his own lies, convinced that he was untouchable and infallible. His downfall began when a rival company launched a hostile takeover bid. Marcus, blinded by his arrogance, underestimated his opponent's cunning and resources. He dismissed their initial advances as insignificant, confident that his superior intellect and connections would prevail. However, his rival, a seasoned veteran of corporate warfare, had meticulously planned his attack, exploiting Marcus's weaknesses and anticipating his every move. The takeover bid escalated, and Marcus found himself embroiled in a fierce battle for control of his company. He fought tooth and nail, deploying every dirty trick in the book, but his efforts were ultimately futile. His carefully constructed empire began to crumble around him, exposing the cracks in his facade. His colleagues, sensing his vulnerability, began to distance themselves, abandoning him to his fate. The media turned against him, portraying him as a ruthless and arrogant tyrant. In the end, Marcus lost everything. His company was acquired, his reputation was ruined, and his career was in tatters. He was left with nothing but the wreckage of his shattered ego. Stripped of his power and status, he was forced to confront the reality of his own insignificance. For the first time in his life, he felt truly vulnerable and alone. The prison that he had so meticulously constructed around himself had become his own personal hell. The walls of his ego, once impenetrable, now lay in ruins, exposing the emptiness within. He realized that his pursuit of success had been a hollow and ultimately self-destructive endeavor. He had sacrificed his integrity, his relationships, and his happiness in the pursuit of an illusion. The applause had faded, the titles were gone, and all that remained was a bitter and broken man. His journey serves as a stark reminder that true strength lies not in the aggrandizement of the self, but in the humility to recognize one's own limitations and the courage to confront one's own flaws. The fall of Marcus illustrates a critical trap, investing one's entire sense of self in external achievements and the validation of others. This creates a fragile construct, easily shattered by the inevitable setbacks and betrayals of life. The weak construct their identities around titles, possessions, and the approval of the crowd. They become actors, desperately playing roles to maintain their carefully crafted image, forever fearful of exposure. This fear fuels a constant need for control, leading them to manipulate and exploit others in a relentless pursuit of power. But this control is an illusion, a house of cards built on shifting sands. The more energy they invest in maintaining this facade, the more vulnerable they become to its collapse. The higher they climb, the further they have to fall. The applause becomes an addiction, the accolades a validation of their very existence. Without them, they are nothing. This is why the loss of status, wealth, or reputation can be utterly devastating to those who have built their lives on such shaky foundations. It is not merely a loss of material possessions, but a loss of self. The truly dangerous aspect of this ego-driven prison is its insidious nature. It creeps up gradually, subtly warping perception and distorting values. Individuals become so focused on self-preservation and self-aggrandizement that they lose sight of what truly matters: integrity, compassion, and genuine human connection. They surround themselves with sycophants who reinforce their inflated sense of self-worth, further isolating them from reality. Honest feedback is filtered out, criticism is met with defensiveness, and dissenting voices are silenced. The ego becomes a self-sealing echo chamber, amplifying its own delusions and preventing any possibility of self-correction. This process can continue for years, even decades, until the individual is completely consumed by their own ego. By then, The path back to reality is obscured by layers of rationalization, denial, and self-deception. Consider the politician obsessed with maintaining their image of infallibility. Every action, every statement is carefully calculated to project an aura of competence and authority. They surround themselves with advisors who reinforce their beliefs and shield them from criticism. They become increasingly detached from the concerns of ordinary people, losing touch with the realities of everyday life. Their ego demands constant validation, leading them to seek out praise and adoration. They believe their own press releases, convinced of their own exceptionalism. But this inflated sense of self-worth blinds them to their own flaws and vulnerabilities. They become arrogant and reckless, making increasingly poor decisions. Eventually, their hubris catches up with them. A scandal erupts, exposing their hypocrisy and incompetence. Their carefully constructed image crumbles, and they are left to face the consequences of their actions. The public turns against them, their colleagues abandon them, and their career is ruined. The fall is swift and brutal, a stark reminder that even the most powerful individuals are not immune to the consequences of their own ego. The businessman who equates net worth with self-worth provides another example. He relentlessly pursues wealth and power, sacrificing everything else in the process. Relationships, health, and personal integrity become secondary to the accumulation of capital. He measures his success by the size of his bank account and the number of zeros on his paycheck. He treats his employees as expendable resources, exploiting them to maximize profits. He believes that he is superior to others because of his wealth, looking down on those who are less fortunate. His ego demands constant gratification, leading him to indulge in excessive spending and extravagant displays of wealth. He surrounds himself with yes-men who cater to his every whim, reinforcing his inflated sense of self-importance. But this obsession with material possessions blinds him to the true sources of happiness and fulfillment. He becomes isolated and alone, unable to form genuine connections with others. Eventually, his relentless pursuit of wealth leads to his downfall. He becomes embroiled in legal battles, his reputation is tarnished, and his fortune dwindles. He realizes that his wealth has brought him nothing but misery and isolation. The prison of his own making has become his personal hell. The artist who seeks fame above all else similarly entraps themselves. Their creativity becomes a means to an end, a tool to achieve recognition and adulation. They compromise their artistic vision, pandering to popular tastes and seeking the approval of critics. They become obsessed with their public image, carefully crafting their persona to attract attention. They measure their success by the number of followers they have on social media and the amount of money their work commands. They believe that fame will bring them happiness and fulfillment, but this pursuit of external validation ultimately stifles their creativity and destroys their passion. They become slaves to their own ego, sacrificing their artistic integrity in the pursuit of fleeting fame. Their work becomes hollow and meaningless, devoid of genuine emotion or substance. Eventually, their audience loses interest, their fame fades, and they are left with nothing but the emptiness of their own ego. The art they created becomes a monument to their own vanity, a testament to the destructive power of unchecked ambition. The key to escaping this trap lies in recognizing the illusory nature of the ego. It is not a fixed entity, but a fluid and constantly evolving construct. It is not who you are, but a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that you have identified with over time. By detaching from these constructs, you can begin to see yourself more clearly, free from the distortions of the ego. This requires self-awareness, introspection, and a willingness to confront your own flaws and vulnerabilities. It requires challenging your own beliefs, questioning your own motivations, and seeking honest feedback from others. It requires cultivating humility, recognizing that you are not the center of the universe and that others have valuable perspectives to offer. It requires focusing on intrinsic values, such as integrity, compassion, and service to others, rather than seeking external validation. It requires accepting that failure is inevitable and that mistakes are opportunities for growth. By embracing these principles, you can break free from the prison of your own ego and live a more authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling life. You begin to understand that true power comes not from dominating others, but from mastering yourself. The mastery of self begins with the dismantling of constructed identities. Observe the politician who meticulously crafts an image of unwavering strength and moral purity. Every speech, every photo opportunity, every carefully worded statement is designed to reinforce this fabricated persona. They become so invested in maintaining this illusion that they lose touch with their own authentic self. They become prisoners of their own creation, forever bound to the expectations of others. Their every action is dictated by the need to preserve the illusion, to avoid any act that might reveal the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. The fear of exposure becomes a constant companion, driving them to ever greater lengths to maintain the charade. The pursuit of power and influence becomes a desperate attempt to validate the false self, to silence the nagging doubts that whisper of inadequacy and emptiness. Ultimately, they sacrifice their integrity, their relationships, and their very humanity in the service of an illusion. Their ambition becomes a self-destructive force, consuming everything in its path. Their fall, when it inevitably comes, is all the more devastating because it shatters not only their public image but their entire sense of self. Consider the artist who craves recognition above all else. They chase trends, mimic styles, and pander to popular tastes, all in the hope of achieving fleeting fame. They sacrifice their own unique vision, their own artistic integrity, in the pursuit of external validation. They become mimics, devoid of originality and substance. Their work becomes a hollow reflection of prevailing fashions, lacking the depth and authenticity that resonates with true artistic expression. Their success, if it comes, is built on a foundation of sand, destined to crumble when the winds of fashion change. They are left with nothing but the bitter realization that they have betrayed their own talent, that they have sold their soul for a fleeting moment in the spotlight. Their legacy is one of mediocrity, a testament to the corrosive power of vanity and the emptiness of chasing external rewards. Their fleeting moment of glory will be a reminder of the greatness they could have achieved if they had stayed true to their own vision. To truly transcend ego is to embrace vulnerability, to accept imperfection, to relinquish the need for control. It is to recognize that strength lies not in invulnerability, but in resilience, in the ability to learn from mistakes, to adapt to changing circumstances, and to persevere in the face of adversity. The truly powerful individual is not the one who dominates others, but the one who inspires them, who empowers them, who helps them to achieve their own potential. True influence is not based on coercion or manipulation, but on trust, respect, and genuine connection. It is earned through integrity, competence, and a commitment to serving the greater good. To be free is to accept that you are not defined by your achievements, your possessions, or your social status. You are defined by your character, your values, and your contribution to the world. This understanding allows you to pursue your goals with passion and determination, without becoming attached to the outcome. You are able to take risks, to experiment, to innovate, without fear of failure. You are able to celebrate your successes without arrogance, and to learn from your failures with humility. Your power is no longer derived from external sources, but from an internal wellspring of strength, resilience, and purpose. Consider the Roman Empire, a civilization built on conquest and sustained by the illusion of invincibility. For centuries, its legions marched across continents, subjugating peoples and amassing vast territories. The emperors, adorned in gold and draped in purple, reveled in the adoration of the masses, believing themselves to be divine rulers destined for eternal glory. But beneath the veneer of power lay a rot of hubris and internal strife. The Senate, once a bastion of wisdom and strategic thought, became a viper's nest of personal ambition and petty rivalries. Generals, drunk on battlefield victories, plotted against their rivals, their loyalty to the empire secondary to their own lust for power. The endless pursuit of expansion stretched the empire's resources thin, while corruption and decadence festered at its core. The citizens, once proud of their republic, became complacent and apathetic, more concerned with bread and circuses than with the preservation of their liberties. The empire's leaders, blinded by their inflated sense of importance, failed to recognize the growing threats from within and without. They clung to outdated strategies and refused to adapt to changing circumstances. They prioritized short-term gains over long-term stability, squandering the empire's wealth on extravagant displays of power while neglecting the needs of its people. The seeds of the empire's downfall were sown not on the battlefield, but in the minds of its rulers. Their inflated egos created a distorted perception of reality, blinding them to the true nature of their power and the fragility of their position. They believed themselves to be invincible, immune to the laws of history and the consequences of their actions. This delusion led to reckless decisions, strategic blunders, and ultimately, the gradual disintegration of their once mighty empire. The legions, once symbols of unparalleled discipline and efficiency, became increasingly reliant on mercenaries, their loyalty bought rather than earned. The economy, fueled by conquest and plunder, stagnated as trade routes were disrupted and resources were depleted. The political system, designed to ensure stability and good governance, devolved into a chaotic scramble for power, with emperors assassinated and civil wars erupting with alarming regularity. The parallels to the individual trapped within the prison of ego are striking. Like the Roman emperors, individuals driven by ego seek external validation and control. They crave recognition, status, and the illusion of superiority. They build their identities on achievements, possessions, and the opinions of others. But this foundation is inherently unstable, as it is dependent on factors outside of their control. The pursuit of external rewards becomes an endless cycle, a desperate attempt to fill an inner void that can never be satisfied. The more they achieve, the more they crave, and the more vulnerable they become to the inevitable setbacks and disappointments of life. Just as the Roman Senate became consumed by personal ambition, individuals trapped by ego are prone to jealousy, envy, and resentment. They compare themselves to others, constantly seeking to prove their own worth and diminish the accomplishments of their rivals. They engage in manipulative tactics and power struggles, sacrificing their integrity and their relationships in the pursuit of personal gain. They become isolated and alienated, unable to form genuine connections with others. And like the Roman citizens who became complacent and apathetic, individuals imprisoned by ego lose sight of their true values and their purpose in life. They become obsessed with superficial concerns, neglecting their personal growth, their relationships, and their contributions to society. They become slaves to their own desires, sacrificing their freedom and their happiness in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. The lessons of history are clear. Empires built on ego are destined to crumble. Individuals who allow ego to control their lives are destined for disappointment and despair. True power lies not in external dominance but in internal mastery. It lies in the ability to transcend the limitations of ego, to embrace vulnerability, to connect with others, and to live a life of purpose and meaning. It is the recognition that lasting greatness comes not from conquest but from contribution, not from control but from compassion, and not from vanity but from virtue. Your power is amplified by your awareness of its potential to corrupt. The ego, a construct of the mind, builds its prison brick by brick, each one mortared with pride, fear, and a thirst for validation. It promises security, a fortress against the perceived threats of the world, but delivers only isolation. The walls are built from past triumphs and failures, meticulously cataloged and used to define the self. Achievements become gilded cages, trapping the individual within the confines of their past successes, afraid to risk failure and tarnish their carefully constructed image. Failures, conversely, become shadowed dungeons, replayed endlessly in the mind, reinforcing the belief in inadequacy and limiting future potential. The ego demands constant maintenance, a ceaseless striving to reinforce its fragile structure. This manifests as a relentless need for external approval, a hunger for recognition that can never be truly satisfied. Praise becomes a temporary reprieve, a fleeting moment of validation that quickly fades, leaving the individual craving more. Criticism, however, is a devastating blow, threatening to shatter the ego's carefully constructed facade and expose the vulnerability beneath. This fear of judgment leads to a suppression of authenticity, a constant performance tailored to meet the expectations of others. True self-expression is sacrificed at the altar of acceptance, leaving the individual feeling hollow and unfulfilled. The ego thrives on comparison, measuring worth against the achievements and possessions of others. This leads to a perpetual state of dissatisfaction, a constant striving for what is perceived as lacking. Success is never enough, as there is always someone richer, more powerful, or more admired. Envy festers, poisoning relationships and fueling a relentless pursuit of unattainable ideals. This comparative mindset blinds the individual to their own unique strengths and potential, preventing them from appreciating their own journey. The prison of ego is further reinforced by the illusion of control. The ego believes it can manipulate the world and the people in it to achieve its desires. It constructs elaborate plans and strategies, attempting to orchestrate events to its advantage. However, the world is inherently unpredictable, and the ego's attempts to control it are often met with frustration and disappointment. This leads to increased anxiety and a desperate clinging to the illusion of control, further entrenching the individual within its prison. The ego creates rigid beliefs and opinions, using them as bars to confine the mind. These beliefs become sacrosanct, defended fiercely against any challenge or contradiction. Open-mindedness is sacrificed in favor of dogmatic adherence to preconceived notions. This intellectual inflexibility prevents the individual from learning and growing, limiting their ability to adapt to new situations and perspectives. The prison of ego is a self-inflicted wound, a consequence of identifying too strongly with the superficial aspects of the self. It is a trap that can only be escaped through self-awareness, humility, and a willingness to embrace vulnerability. The first step to freedom is recognizing the existence of the prison itself, acknowledging the ego's influence on thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. This requires a brutal honesty, a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths about one's own motivations and insecurities. Once the prison is acknowledged, the work of dismantling it can begin. This involves challenging the ego's beliefs, questioning its assumptions, and practicing detachment from its constant demands. It requires cultivating self-compassion, accepting imperfections, and forgiving past mistakes. It means letting go of the need for external validation and finding worth within oneself. It entails embracing vulnerability, allowing oneself to be seen and heard authentically, without fear of judgment. It necessitates cultivating genuine connections with others, based on empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. It demands relinquishing the illusion of control and accepting the inherent uncertainty of life. Ultimately, escaping the prison of ego is a lifelong journey, a constant process of self-reflection and self-improvement. It is a